Hey, I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater, and I am joined today by a very special guest. Troy Germano's here. Great to see you.
Good to see you, Mitch.
Man, studio icon.
Oh, I don't know about that, but thank you.
Yeah, well, we have a lot to talk about, including the new Hit Factory plugin that you guys are announcing. Lots of cool stuff going on. Let's talk a little bit about the story here. You got into the studio business back in the early 80s, right?
I started full-time in 1981.
Okay.
But when my father purchased the Hit Factory in 1975, I was working there after school.
Oh, wow.
Pretty much like 3 days a week in the tape duplication department and then in the tape library. And then after school, when I graduated, I started full-time in 81.
Wow.
So
your
really
whole
been
life,
there since the
basically.
beginning. Yeah.
Pretty much your whole life
Yeah.
spent in Hit Factory studios around the world,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
So what is the current roster of Hit Factory studios?
So there's two studios in New York City in NoHo, Studio G1 and Studio G2, and I've been there now in that location about 18 years since construction. And this is the 7th location, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's correct.
Wow.
Between New York, London, and Miami. Most of the studios predominantly were always in New York, and we always would move and stay at places for long periods of time. But the goal was to always try to be in a position where we own the buildings. In some cases, we lease the spaces because it just made more sense. But yeah, so it's been since 2007 when I started the studios in NoHo, and they're going strong ever since.
Looking back through the years, the legacy, the list of artists and recordings that have been done there, would it be easier to list albums that weren't done at Hit Factory Studio?
I don't think I'd say that. That's a nice thought. But I think, again, what separates the studios over the years is most studios work on one genre, two genres. We do a lot of hip hop, a lot of pop, a lot of rock, some jazz, some blues, and soundtracks for film and television. So we're constantly mixing it up, which really is an amazing thing for all the engineers that work there and the assistant engineers and the training assistant engineers. But yeah, the roster does get crazy between artists and bands.
I bet you got endless stories of...
Endless stories, endless stories. All really, very fortunate situations to be in and to build friendships with a lot of these people, because I think that's really what separates what goes on.
Right.
At a certain point, it's like the 10,000 hour thing, like we were talking about before, and you start to know what to do innately, and you know how to curate and make the place better in the recording studio world. But it's really about keeping your relationships together. That's what I've always been taught by my dad, and it's really paramount in the studio business.
Because you're facilitating creative and artistic endeavors.
Correct.
And participating in those, and so supporting those is so important.
And there's a lot of demands and needs, and you have to really know how to do that and navigate through that, and also give clients, producers and songwriters and musicians privacy. I mean, that's really a key thing. You don't want to be overbearing, and you don't want to spend too much time outside of the room either.
How amazing to be part of all those just incredible musical accomplishments.
Yeah. It's again, I look at it as being fortunate and working hard, and I think you have to have a passion for it. Otherwise, the studio business could be a gift or a curse, and you have to really know how to play it the right way.
Right.
And you really have to love what you do. I think that's the key thing.
Right.
And treat everybody with respect.
Right.
And that's something that we've really been very good at over the years.
Right.
Not just me. The assistant engineers, the engineers that work for me, I give them a lot of their clients, and they hold on to the clients. But you want somebody new walking through the door every day, and you don't want to lose that person. And of course, when people spend a lot of time on a record in the studios, sometimes they're going to go to other studios just for a change of pace, and you can't take that personal. I have other friends that have studios that get annoyed if a band leaves, an artist leaves, and they've been there for a month or a week or 5 months. You can't look at it that way. They're all going to come back, and sometimes they do need a change of scenery, and we've experienced that over the years too, as well as being very lucky to have people come in and stay for very long periods of time.
Speaking of relationships, we were talking earlier that our mutual friends from SSL are here today, and you've had a few SSL couples.
Yes, we've had 26 SSLs
Wow.
since 1984, and I couldn't be more pro SSL. The support is incredible, and even with ownership changes over the years, some of the people have stayed on that have become great lifelong friends, but the support is always there, and I think they're at a level that nobody else even remotely comes close to. And there's some other really great console manufacturers and equipment manufacturers, but they've been really, really good to us over the years.
Yeah, and that kind of leads me to a couple of questions related to what you're actually doing here, which is introducing the first Hit Factory software product, correct?
Correct, that's correct.
And it is called HitVerb.
That is correct.
And it's a convolution reverb that has captured the Hit Factory spaces.
Yeah, 12 of the 26 rooms. I wish I had them all, but I don't. But I'm not really missing anything that I think should be part of this.
Right.
But yeah, we're very proud of what we have, and I think it operates very well, and it sounds incredible, and I think it's going to be able to bring the Hit Factory to people that necessarily wouldn't be able to be in New York or London recording. And I don't think it hurts the studios if people are now using part of the sounds of what we are at home or in their production studios or in their recording studios. I think it's trying to share something and create a product that can become a tool in their toolkit that they use to blend into their songs consistently on a daily basis. That's what I'm hoping for.
And we're going to give you a demo here coming up where you'll get to hear some of the sounds and see the incredible user interface you guys have designed as well. It's so cool.
Thank you.
The way you can bring carpet into a room or take carpet out and affect the early reflections and the tail. And I mean, the microphone placement.
I think it has a
all those
modern
things.
look too. It really feels right. So,
but it's very intuitive. And that's one of the things that caught my eye is you can pretty much sit down and instantly know what's happening.
Yeah.
We're spreading microphones out, so we're getting more of a stereo spread and so on.
Correct.
So tell us about those spaces, because that's one of the things that really is a hallmark of Hit Factory. Is you've always had these fantastic acoustic spaces, and actually you do a studio design group as well.
I do.
And so you bring that to other studios as well. But talk a little bit about that. How do you approach those studios?
It's kind of a black magic type thing. I mean, over the years, doing it with my dad and certain technicians that worked at the studios. And then when we had the Hit Factory in London, which we started in 1989, had in a joint venture with Sony until 1994, 1993 or 94. That's when I met Neil Grant and Dave Bell. They were together as partners with Alan Kundal. Derek, Alan, and Dave went off on their own to form White Mark, and we've done a lot of collaborative projects over the years, and Dave's become like my uncle and a friend. They're all my buddies. You kind of have to know what you want to build going into it and know what materials you want to use, and it's really a feel thing more than anything else, and try not to build the same thing cookie cutter every time out. And I think we've been pretty good at that.
What's interesting is in the plugin, as you choose a studio space that you're going to work in, there's a little history of it there, and a description of it, and the dimensions, and all of that stuff.
Albums and titles of
songs. Yeah,
Correct.
And some of the credits for it. Yeah, exactly. What's interesting to me is that I think many times people will think of a studio as it's got to be, kind of rectangular and long and have a high ceiling, and there are rooms of every shape.
They really are. They really are. And I think it gives people a lot of choice. And I'm sure, customers are going to gravitate toward one room over another depending upon what kind of music they're making. But yeah, they're all different sizes. I mean, there's the scoring rooms between Studio 1 in New York and the London L1 room, which was the former CBS Studios before it was the Hit Factory London. Jerry Goldsmith did a lot of work there, a lot of film scores in that room. The Rolling Stones did Flashpoint in that room, which was 2 new songs for their live album from the Steel Wheel Store back in 1989. So it's the shapes and sizes are all very different. That does not follow a pattern. It really doesn't.
Right.
It follows a smoothness pattern, a sonic pattern, but they all have their own characteristics, as they should, because they're very different.
Right. And then you can tweak those, as I mentioned.
Yeah, you can.
There's a carpet in-out switch,
Correct.
which is very cool. You can affect the tail length, the balance of the early reflections, and the tail. Also, there's a high-pass and low-pass filters, and microphone placements, height placements, all kinds of things for the source, as well as the 2 microphones, and microphone choices. So it's very deep, but very easy to navigate.
And I think it's 3 good microphone choices that give people some variation and change the color a little bit of what you're recording in those rooms, whether it's a vocal, a piano, a guitar, a string section, a drum kit, background vocals. There's so many different things they could be used for that I think people are going to really feel like they have a little piece of the Hit Factory. And if we can offer that, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Besides it being a successful product,
Sure,
you
of
want it
course.
to be something that really is a staple. I mean, that's kind of the goal.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll get there. Hopefully we will.
I love that some of the presets are sort of thinly disguised. You can figure out what album or what artist
Correct.
or
We
whatever.
kind of played, little
what
nameplay
you're going for.
as we kind of needed to, and that was kind of fun doing that actually.
Yeah. So how did you go about doing that? Do you have records of how an artist would have done something, or?
Yes, and I remember which records were done in all the rooms.
Yeah.
Because I was really there from the beginning. I probably missed a few that should be in there, but I think I've kind of covered the broad spectrum as best I possibly could. But yeah, what people were doing in what rooms. What rooms did more vocals as opposed to drums or basic tracks or scoring work, whatever it might be. But we'll see how people use it. And it can be used immersively as well, even though it's a stereo plugin. And we've been using it on Sam Cooke's catalog and the Rolling Stones 40 Licks album. We mixed half of that record, the Abco record side. and just recently on Joan Jett for her new live album, or actually her first live album that's going to come out at some point, I would imagine this year, and most of her catalog as well. So we're working on some of the older Rolling Stones stuff as well. We just finished Let It Bleed, and we finished Beggar's Banquet, and I think yesterday we started Out of Our Heads. So we're trying to do different things here, and use the studios differently. But in terms of the plugin, it's multi-purpose.
So we were talking earlier, and you said the studios are really busy.
Yeah.
That you guys are cranking, and of course.
But it's a studio business. As busy as we are, we'll have a week, 2 weeks that are packed,
Right.
and then we'll have 2 or 3 days where there's tumbleweeds, and it's not just me.
Right.
That happens in studios.
Of
That's
course.
just the feast or famine kind of a thing that happens in studios, but we keep it very busy.
Are you seeing a lot of tracking going on? Because that's what the Hit Factory. I shouldn't say that's what you're known for, but those rooms are so fantastic.
I mean, this,
for
of course,
tracking.
is a tracking device. People will use it with mixing, but a lot of recording. And then over the years, a lot of mixing as well. But, now there's tons of vocal recording sessions. I think we do quite a bit of that, and basic tracks. And then writing sessions in the pop and hip hop world, which are really like tracking sessions, but they happen in the control room, as opposed to being the studio. Sometimes vocals get done in the control rooms now.
Right. Has that changed your approach to studio design? The fact that the control room has become more of a production space?
No, I mean, I think if I build another facility at some point, and maybe the control rooms will be a little bit bigger, like they were when we were at the headquarters on 54th between 9th and 10th. But you don't want it to be too big. It has to be an intimate, great sounding room. And when they get too big, I think you kind of lose some of the quality and some of the focus.
Right. Well, let's stop here. We'll jump over to my office studio, and let's check out this plugin, because I think you're really going to be blown away. It's fantastic. So here we see the user interface for HitVerb. I've got it running in Pro Tools, but of course it's compatible with just about any DAW. If we take a quick tour, beginning here in the upper left, we can set the size of the plugin window. Under the gear, we have a few settings. Normalized source distance is one you might want to experiment with. What that does is keep the volume the same when you move the microphone around in the room, and we'll see that a little bit later. Minimize reflection time sets the early reflections to their smallest value. We can make a stereo input mono. Open up tooltips when you hover over something inside the user interface, open the manual, and so on. I do highly recommend checking out the manual. It's very cool. It has a lot of great information in it. Over here, we've got our presets, so we can open presets, save as, and so on. And there are a variety of presets included. Here's a whole list of many of them there, a couple of them from Troy, then your user settings as well. Now, if we come down here to the main window, as we move through the different studios that are available, I think there's 12 of them here, if I remember correctly, what you'll get is 3 ways to look at that particular space. So here we're in Studio 1, Hit Factory 54. We can look at a history of the space, some of the artists who's recorded there, notable recordings that were made there, a description of it, and so on. We can see a schematic of the space, and then we can see a graphic image of it as well. So that's very cool as you move through the different spaces. Over here we have a 3D representation, and that'll show us what's happening with the microphone and the source. Again, we'll see that in just a second. There are 3 basic parts for the controls of the plugin. We have the mixer, of course. This sets our wet-dry blend. You can adjust the early reflections level as well as the tail level, either separately or you can link them using this button. So when we move both of them, they'll both move together, or you can move them individually, and so on. Here with shape, we have a low cut filter from 10 hertz up to 1 kilohertz. We have a high cut filter that goes from 20 kilohertz down to 2 kilohertz. So that gives you a broad range of shaping there. A cool control is you can actually install carpeting into any of the spaces, which is going to subtly affect the top end and also the length of the tail that's in that room as well. So you can experiment with that. Tail length, of course, gives us a plus-minus adjustment for the length of the reverb tail. And we can go all the way from 200% all the way down to 0% if you like. Double-clicking any control restores it to its default, which here in this case is going to be the length of the actual convolution reverb that was captured for the particular studio. The fun controls are over here. This is where we set up our microphones and where we also set the source in relation to those microphones. So we can determine how far the source is away from the microphones with this control. We can also control the left-right positioning of the source, and we can control the height of the source in the room from 0.5 meter to 2.5 meters from the floor. We can also adjust the positioning of the microphones, so we can set the height of the mics, and we can set the width, which affects the stereo imaging that we get, anywhere from basically a mono image all the way to a wider stereo image. We have 3 different microphone choices. U67, this is going to give us a brighter kind of tone. We have 4038, that's a Coles ribbon microphone pair. That's going to be a little bit warmer sounding, a little more neutral. And then the MKH 800 is going to be a very neutral microphone pair. Now that really makes a subtle difference in the sound of the room, but it is something you can use to shape that sound. These controls range from pretty dramatic effect to subtle effect, and it really depends on the source, how you're positioning in the rooms, how you have the microphones, and all those kind of things. But having that subtle control really does let you shape the reverb to exactly what you want. So let's start by auditioning the different studio rooms that are captured in the plugin with convolution reverb. Now I've got this set up so we're listening to 100% wet. We're not hearing the dry sound, and I'm just going to use a basic snare drum hit just so we can hear the characteristics of those rooms as the ambience plays out. So we'll begin with Hit Factory 54 Studio 1, and this is a big sounding room. So you can hear we have a lot of different tones there, a lot of different room ambiances that you can apply to your tracks. Let's go back here to the Hit Factory Studio 1, Hit Factory 54 Studio 1, and now we'll adjust some of those controls and listen to what they do for the sound quality as we're playing with those. So I'm just going to play that same drum hit through here, and we'll move some of the controls around and check out what they're doing for us. Now, all those examples are just with one of the rooms. So if you dial through all the different rooms, try out all the different settings, you have just an incredible array of possible reverb sounds. And being able to get those authentic tones from the actual Hit Factory rooms, there's just no way to do it in many cases anymore, or you have to go to the Hit Factory and record there yourself in order to capture those ambiances. So this is a really cool plugin, super easy to use. The user interface is fun to play with, very fun. Definitely check this one out. So I hope you enjoyed that look at the HitVerb from Hit Factory. Fantastic plugin. You really want to check this out. There's just nothing like the ability to get the sound of those spaces on your tracks, whether you're recording at home, in a project studio, wherever you're working. So congratulations on that. So very cool.
Thank you.
Of course, Hit Factory has that long legacy, all the rooms in the studios and the classic albums and all that. But man, you guys are staying on the cutting edge.
I mean, we tried to. I mean, we're fortunate enough to have Kendrick Lamar in working on the Damn album a few years back, and Post Malone is in on a regular basis. G-Eazy just worked on his last 2 albums, and this new album about to come out. So we kind of mix it up, and that helps the engineers really become great engineers and hopefully one day great producers.
Fantastic. Well, so much cool stuff going on. Appreciate you sitting down with us and taking some time. And
thank you.
Come back sometime and we'll just tell stories.
We can tell stories. We'll working on a documentary, so at some point,
oh, that's great.
That'll be part of it. There'll be more stories than that, but I would love to sit down with you again.
Yeah, we will.
This is really a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And again, congrats on the plugins. Fantastic.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us here. I've been talking to Troy Germano from Hit Factory and Studio Design Group. You have to check out HitVerb. Super cool. Head over to sweetwater.com or contact your Sweetwater sales engineer. They've got all the information. Thanks for joining me today. I'm Mitch Gallagher from Sweetwater.